My name is Jason King. I'm Associate Professor in the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at Tisch School of the Arts, New York University. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, I'm a musician, I'm a DJ, and I wrote the liner notes to the re-release of D'Angelo's Voodoo for Light in the Attic Records. This album means a lot to me. When it came out in January of 2000, which is already 13 years ago at this point, I immediately loved the album. I'd always been a huge fan of D'Angelo, but I thought that there was something about this particular album that suggested that he had turned a new leaf, or he had reached a new plateau in his creativity and his music making and in his production style particularly. So I've always been a fan of it just as a record, and so the opportunity to actually write liner notes for a re-release of it really excited me. So for the liner notes, I tried to interview as many of the original musicians as I possibly could. I interviewed Questlove, who is the drummer, percussionist on the album, and also one of the writers. Charlie Hunter plays guitar and bass on a few of the album's key tracks. Pino Palladino, whose bass sound is extraordinarily essential to the sound and the quality of the album. James Poyser, who plays keys. Also Russ Elevato, who is the mixer on the album. And so the mix is basically the overall sound of the album once it's been produced, bringing in an engineer to actually graft and create that sound. And so Russ Elevato is a key player in this album because the sound of the album, the mix of it, is really unusual and really eccentric and definitely retro. Alan Leeds, who's D'Angelo's manager at the time, and also organizes the Voodoo tour, world tour for him. Most people know Voodoo because of the song Untitled, which was the biggest hit, and of course people remember the video in which D'Angelo was half naked and so on. But there's so much more to the album than just the Untitled song. It's a collection of really, really great songwriting. So these are the actual liner notes that I wrote for the Voodoo album re-release. They're 8,000 words, and it's part of a gatefold that comes out of the actual album itself. Of course, there's some of the original artwork is kind of emblazoned in the background of it. But these were a real labor of love. Definitely 8,000 words is a bit unusual and a bit eccentric for liner notes these days that are not part of a box set. We live in an age where word count is very scarce, even though we have all kinds of opportunity to read all kinds of material and information. So on the internet, journalists often don't get the opportunity to write to their heart's desire and write as much as they sometimes would like to write. So this was a really rare opportunity that Light in the Attic gave me to just go off and write as much as I possibly could on Voodoo. For me, liner notes are really important because I grew up in the era of vinyl, where you would go to the record store, you'd buy vinyl, and then you would read all of the credits, and you wanted to know everybody who was involved with making the record, and you would spot names of musicians or engineers, mixers, mastering engineers who were involved in one record that you also remembered from another record, and you made those connections. And that was part of the way that I discovered music, and I became informed about how music was made. And it also inspired me to want to make music because I wanted to be one of those people also who was credited on a record. In some ways, it makes a lot of sense to hear this record again on vinyl because it's such an album that celebrates the analog and celebrates the era of vinyl and all of the achievements that were made as part of that era. So get it if you can. It's definitely worth it.